right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is another episode of Fermyon Live. My name is Torsten, and today I have with me Karthik. Before we jump right into the topic, let's do a quick introduction to you in order to introduce ourselves and ensure that you know who's speaking to you and who's basically walking us through latest improvements in the JavaScript SDK. So my name is Torsten. I work as a cloud advocate at Fermyon, a little more than 1.5 years right now. So I mainly take care of explaining our services, products, and concepts to developers or help developer teams actually build real-world distributed applications using WebAssembly. Karthik, handing over to you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Karthik. I'm a software engineer at Fermyon, and I primarily work on the JavaScript SDK. And hopefully, unlocking a lot more workloads as time goes by. That's my most of what I do pretty much at Fermyon.
So you're the one who's basically ensuring that developers, TypeScript or JavaScript developers can use the majority of the existing ecosystem, like those libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also making the SDK feel natural for a JavaScript developer without it having too many WebAssembly specific parts that they have to deal with. That's
Okay.
coming up when we talk about the latest improvements.
Exactly. Yeah, we were actually obviously we were spoilering a little bit already. So yeah, in this episode, so in the next hour or so, we will dive again into the JavaScript experience with Spin for building reactive or serverless applications, because there have been a bunch of improvements that not just us at Fermyon, also the open source community did in the over last couple of weeks, maybe months, that we have shipped already, and some of them are obviously like hot off press, so to say. Um, yeah, I think Karthik and I we briefly talked about what to demonstrate and what to show during that episode earlier today, and yeah, we came up basically with two topics that we want to cover. So first of all, and I think I will bring up my screen. Let's go with that layout. Is that we recently updated our templates for building HTTP applications with TypeScript and or JavaScript. So as part of that, we released a blog post explaining how one could build an HTTP API with Hono. That's an alternative router or a popular router in the JavaScript ecosystem. So far, up until that point in time, we were mainly using the ITI router. So, Karthik, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the first releases of the JavaScript SDK for Spin, we were basically re-exporting the underlying ITI router to add like some syntactic sugar on top of it.
That is correct. Also, we modified a little bit of the structure inside because we were not using the fetch event, at least in the first releases where
Yeah.
we were still using QuickJS. So we had to convert it back to whatever the HTTP format we were using. And then when we started using more fetch event stuff, we were still re exporting it, but then we dropped it with the V3 to allow
Yeah.
people to use their preferred routers because the compatibility was high enough with the use of fetch event.
Exactly. So there was a graduation. So with Spin JS SDK 1.0, 2.0, we were basically hiding the IDI router from the user or from the developer. With release 3 or version 3.0 and everything later, we basically pulled in ITI as a first-class dependency, so to say, right? So if you created a new Spin app, you ended up with a package JSON, and that was mentioning in the dependencies section the ET router. So that could, developers use for building their HTTP APIs. And I think with release 3.2.0, we were extending the experience so that you as a developer could right now choose between different routing dependencies when building apps with TypeScript and or JavaScript. And as part of that, we released 2 blog posts. One obviously like introducing, hey, you can use Hono as an alternative right now. And then another one last week. Yeah, last week was that, where we basically took some measurements and compared different approaches on how to route in or when building HTTP workloads. So I think this is obviously worth reiterating by building a simple or maybe 3 simple applications to give you as a Spin user or as a developer who wants to build with WebAssembly a sense or a feeling of how that looks like and how the Spin CLI experience changed. We obviously try to provide an incredible developer experience with everything we release. And as part of that, I know Karthik, Till, Radu, and others we were reiterating over the UX on how do we actually give developers that or present them with the choice of the router, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Let's jump right into terminal. So basically, I am in my Fermyon Live folder over here. I have installed Spin, let's see, in version 3.2.0. And with Spin 3.2.0 installed, you can always do a Spin templates upgrade to ensure that you have latest and greatest templates for different programming languages or different, let's say, shapes of applications on your machine. So this should present me, oops, let me go back over here. So this should present me with all the remotes that I have installed templates from. And as you can see, the first one, that's the important one for the sake of JavaScript and or TypeScript. So I can instruct the templates upgrade command right now to install latest and greatest Spin JavaScript SDK templates. So let's try that for now. And as you can see, I ended up with 4 upgraded templates. So HTTP, JS, TS, and the corresponding Redis templates have been upgraded on my machine. Depending on when users installed version 3.2.0, they may or you may end up seeing a different source for those templates, correct?
Yep. If you had originally installed Spin before it moved to the CNCF from the Fermyon org, and you had templates from then, you would have those versions. But as of a couple of days ago, those are broken because we have a archived repository at Fermyon for docs. So it's preferable that you always do Spin templates installed from the Spin framework org, because the Fermyon org does not any longer redirect to the Spin framework.
Okay, so this is important if you ran into issues when upgrading the templates. So I guess it's basically doing a Spin templates install, pointing to the repository that is also mentioned in docs, I guess, on how to install those templates, or by simply installing or upgrading Spin using Homebrew, for example. Okay, so now that I have the latest version of the templates on my machine, I could, for example, do a spin new t http-js. Oh no, let's do TypeScript. Come on. So this is a familiar experience if you have used Spin so far. So you have to provide like essential metadata about the application. You can always specify those as arguments. of the new command when you think about automating this as part of a script, or you don't want to make the CLI wait for user input. Okay, so first let's start with name of the application. Let's start with hello -Hono, because for the first application I want to use the Hono router. Let's stick with the default description, and let's configure our app to react on incoming HTTP requests on all routes underneath the root route. So that's basically what the default expression over here is telling us. Okay, and now we have like a select property where you can choose from the supported routers. And as you can see, we have IDI, we have Hono, which has been recently added, and we have an option to create an HTTP app or a spin app without an actual router at all, where you can either roll your own router, or you say, hey, I just want to react to, I don't know, this post or request with that post circumstances and a GET request at that endpoint. Then it's maybe not worth using an entire routing dependency at all, and instead like do that simple if condition or the switch case on your own. But for now, let's start with Hono. So we end up with a Hello Hono app. Let's move into that folder. And before opening the editor, let me quickly, or let me do a code dot and spin build over here. Because as part of the spin build command, let's have a look at spin toml. Down here, line 18, you can see that it's also executing npm install. So if dependencies have not been installed yet, spin build takes care of installing those dependencies, and then it's running an npm run build, which will under the covers basically take the TypeScript source code and convert it all the way down to or compile that all the way down to a WebAssembly component. And I executed spin build immediately because this also, turns on all the lights in Visual Studio Code, so that the language server protocol is able to find all the dependencies and providing recommendations and IntelliSense auto-completion, all those capabilities. Yeah, so with that, we end up with, let's say, a hello world or a skeleton of an HTTP application that comes with a couple of batteries included. So Hono is offering more than pure routing capabilities. So we can use we can use existing or out-of-the-box middlewares. Like, for example, the logger is, I guess, the most simple one that, for every incoming request, it logs on the way in and on the way out, I think, a message to standard out. We can use, or you can use custom middlewares to have code being executed before your actual handler or after your actual handler. So like similar to an aspect-oriented programming, where you may end up with your full-fledged application, but then things may change, and you want to run something before or after every handler that you've written before. Then a custom middleware is a great mechanism of doing that without having to mess around in every handler. And last but not least, we have like simple routing capabilities. So on that Hono application, you can say, hey, there is a new endpoint that should always be invoked when a GET request hits the root route, or another handler that should be invoked if a GET request hits that hello route and has a route parameter specified. On top of this top level app routing mechanisms like like post over here, items, for example, as like this, right? We have the context. We could simply say c.status 201. For now, it's not happy with me.
Yeah. I've not used Hono enough to quickly tell you what's missing. It's probably c.set.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah. Oh no, I know. Let's do it like that way. I think if I do c dot return c dot status code, it's status, not status code, I guess. That's returning void. Okay. No overload match call c void not susceptible. And this one returns a response, I guess. Yeah. Okay, then it's not status, then it's can't I simply do that? Okay, anything. Yeah, it was status, just sets the status code, but it does not create a response to return it back. However, what I actually wanted to explain is that on top of creating or routing on at the app level, you can create some sort of areas like sub-routers on the scope of the app and then register them, which is super nice if your app grows, right? And you want to split the code in logical modules or npm packages again. So Hono gives us a bunch of flexibility here. Also, a nice thing is the underlying runtime. So if you run a spin app, the runtime will basically acquire a listener or set up a listener, and for incoming requests, it will invoke the WebAssembly module as part if the request matches whatever's written in the trigger configuration. So for that one, it's for every route, it will invoke our Hello Hono module. And then the JavaScript runtime will invoke an event, right?
The fetch event will be called for every HTTP request that comes in. It's converted into the JavaScript standard fetch event, and that triggers an event handler, which is what app.fire here registers to.
Exactly. If we look into app.fire, I only have do I have the actual implementation there?
If you go to the wherever the type is, and if you step one file back, that you can look at the JS file for it.
If I step one file back.
No, I mean, like if you look at the breadcrumb, you see the .tts.
Yeah.
You will see a Hono-based.js somewhere in there. Somewhere. I have no idea. Usually that's how I find out.
Let me have a look over there. If we go to Hono, where is it? Hono.
Yeah.
So
Hono-based.js.
Hono-base.js, exactly. And if we look for Fire, we can see that that's basically syntactic sugar around add event listener for fetch, which then hooks up the Hono router and asks that to handle that incoming request. So we don't have to write that add event listener, those 2 to 3 lines of JavaScript on our own, which is super convenient and makes the code easy to read and easy to understand. Okay, so besides that, nothing changes, right? So we are in that folder of our application. We can do a spin B that checks, hey, has the source code changed in the meantime? If so, yes, then our source code got compiled down to WebAssembly, and I can do a spin up over here, and I can see Hello Hono is right now listening on localhost 3000. So I can use curl to curl into this one, and I guess the other one was hello Fermyon. What is it? %20 live. and I get back that template string or the JSON that is with the computed template string. And I guess if I do a curl I exposed to, what was it, items?
Items, yep.
Yeah. Then we get back an empty object and an HTTP status code of 201. So if we look at the terminal instance that's responsible for running, we can see that the logger middleware is, running before the GET request and after the one, to give us some sense of how long did the actual request take to process and to compute the response and to return that back to the callee. All right, so this is, sorry?
No, I said that's cool. I actually have not seen the logger used, and seeing the time it took to process is quite nice.
Yeah, that it's super nice. Although in production, people should use different approaches because logging to standard out is a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Hono, and for those of you who have used IDE router before, love its flexibility. Obviously, nothing has changed, right? So if I do a new HTTP TS over here and call it hello-IDE and stick with the defaults again, choose IDE for the HTTP router. Let me move to hello-IDE and do again a code and then a spin build. We end up with the same spin tunnel, right? It has the same build instructions. It has the same configuration. Obviously, the name of my component differs. And if we look at the package.json that this has been created, we can see that we have IDE router as a dependency in contrast to Hono, which we had before. And if we look at the source, this looks pretty familiar to what people already know from Spin apps built with JavaScript SDK 3.0, for example. So we use the autorouter from IDE and register like the same routes, right? The get route to basically return hello spin and a route hello / with a route parameter called name to greet the callee based on whatever argument or value is passed as part of the route. And we have the registration for the fetch event, which takes the incoming request and asks the router to handle that one.
Yep. Nothing has changed as far as IDE router has gone.
Nothing has changed, yeah. Okay, so let's add items over here. And I think the simplest example in IDE would be return new response over here that and then set status to 201.
Status needs to be
that's an object. You're right.
And the first thing needs to be JSON stringified, I think.
Okay, stringify, and I think there is okay, that's an error 40 over here. I think there is a shortcut. We could also do I don't know, products. Just for curiosity, we could simply do JSON and now pass in status 201. Right, so there's syntactic sugar provided by IDE as a shortcut to compute the response.
Yeah.
Okay, so also for this one, nothing has changed. We go over here. We say at some point spin up -- build to run the app and ensure the latest source code will be compiled to WebAssembly before starting the app. Okay, the app is again listening on port 3000. And let's go there to not confuse people. So we say localhost 3000. So we expect to get back hello spin. And if we say, what was it? Hello Fermyon, I don't know, %20 live, we are not getting that encode.
We are not encoding, decoding stuff.
Okay. We are not decoding, taking care about that one for now. But you can, as you can see, the message gets computed. So let's try ix post to items. We expect an empty object with 201.
Yep.
There we go. And the same for products.
Yep.
We get the same back.
Yeah.
Cool. Obviously, IDE has also concepts baked into to run code, to have code being executed before or after a handler, or to align them when registering your handlers. But overall, the intention was, or our intention was, not to modify templates that people already knew and used for quite some while.
Yeah.
Okay, those two addressed. Let's have a look at the third one. So there's a spin new HTTPS, and let's say hello plain. And let's say we don't want to use a router at all. Hello plain. And again, we open code, install dependencies behind the scenes. Again, this has not changed besides the component name being different. If we look at the, let's have a look at the package JSON, we see there is no routing dependency at all. And the implementation is obviously a little bit more low level, right? So we have to take care of implementing a handle function. And that could be as simple as immediately computing the response, returning that back, or we could start, having a look at if, I don't know, request dot, let's say method, for example, equals get. We could do one thing, right? Let's like this, and otherwise, let's do it the other way around, because I think that's more natural. Okay, so if it is a post, and let's say, let's keep it simple for now. We could say response new JSON stringify this and that, and content type is application /JSON in that case. Okay, so only if the incoming request is a post request, we return a 201 with an empty object as response payload, set the content type to application JSON. For all other request circumstances, we return hello spin with a status code of 200 and a content type set to text plain. So moving back to the terminal again, let's do a spin up spin up -- build. There we go. Compiles the code down to WebAssembly, creates the listener. There we go. So let's say curl localhost 3000. Right now, because we have that wildcard trigger configuration, we can use whatever over here. We get back, we still get back an hello spin. However, if we send a post request to some endpoint, we get back an HTTP 201 with an empty object being sent to the callee. Awesome. So these are some of the recent changes we made to the templates. And obviously, if we do a spin ut HTTP JS, hello, let's say IDE, for example, JS, description, path, and you also can choose your routers when using JavaScript instead of TypeScript. And you end up with the JavaScript variant of that one, IDE-JS, and let's simply cut source index. So there are no types mentioned over here. That's a simple JavaScript variant of what we saw before. Cool. Besides updated templates, Karthik, do you want to do a quick explainer on what we changed with the latest release?
Yeah, The biggest change I would mention is now we have modularized the SDK. Like previously, we were bundling all the spin functions like the key value store, the LLM, the SQLite into one giant package, which meant that whenever you were building an application using the SDK, the resulting component had imports for all those interfaces, which
Hmm.
meant you couldn't really run it outside the spin
Yeah.
runtime. And like for example, if you wanted to run with wasm time, you would run into errors like wasm time not knowing what the LLM spin LLM interface is or the spin SQLite interfaces. We relied on previously there was an attempt to use tree shaking to remove unused imports, but that did not cover resources, so it partially worked, but it was not a proper solution. So now with the latest version, we have modularized it all, separated each interface into its own package, which means you can just import whatever interface you need. Like, if you look at the spin.toml of the latest applications that you have built, Thorsten, you can
Yeah.
see not spin.toml, the package.json.
Okay. Let me just simply grab some TypeScript thing over there. Yeah, this is basically where we added like two post handlers. So if we go to package.json,
Yeah, if you look at the
uh,
package JSON, now you would see like there's two packages from the Spin framework. One is the build tools and WASI HTTP proxy.
okay,
The WASI HTTP proxy is just a package that exports the HTTP trigger. So when you have that, you're using the HTTP trigger, and the build tools is what is used to build your uh, application from your JavaScript source all the way to a WASM component. So these
hmm,
two packages, and now if you, for example, you wanted to add key value store or use spin variables, you would have to install
yeah.
a new package called at spin framework slash spin kv or at spin framework slash variables.
Okay, so meaning we go to npmjs.com over there
Yeah,
and search for spin framework. I don't know if the search is able to search for like those scopes. Oh, it
I think
is.
it should be.
It is. But I don't know if they offer like a hierarchy where I can go to some page of spin framework. I don't know.
Oh, I think you can click on one of those packages and then click on the org. It might work. I am not sure if, probably not then.
Okay, anyways, either ways, this gives us a good sense of what people could or what developers could find there. And there's the mentioned spin variables. I guess that's a
Yeah.
good example that we will that we can use to extend our or to create a sample application that is like using variables. And obviously, we could use the spin kv to you know
Yeah.
store a value in key value store and retrieve another value, right?
Yeah. Yep. So the modularization was the biggest, as I said, but modularization also meant we needed better build system where people could just install a package and go using it without
Hmm.
having to deal with the bit types or like for a JavaScript developer, they don't really want to look at the bit types. It doesn't mean a lot to them. The ideal experience would be that you take an application, you add a package, and you continue writing code, and it just works for you. You don't
Yeah.
want to have to turn too many configuration knobs or continue setting up too many things. So like the build system was revamped entirely. And
Okay.
previously up to in the version 3 of the SDK, we used something called netwit, which used to have to keep track of what packages were installed, what wit files were done. But now we've learned from netwit and combined it into the build tooling in the build tools package, which now reads the package JSON of all dependencies and gets all the wit worlds and takes care of all the management for you in the back. So there is no combined wit. You don't see as a developer, you do not see the wit files, or you don't have to manage things and like things going out of sync. And so, which meant the structure looks very idiomatic for a JavaScript developer. You don't see any non-JavaScript files in your process.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I remember like times where there was a nitwit and a spin or some generated wit file as well, right? So there were different like yeah, let's say cornerstones while we were progressing toward like
Yeah,
that fully idiomatic experience that we can present as of today. So to reiterate over that, so first and foremost, I think we are making it easier to run apps built with Spin and JavaScript on runtimes other than Spin, because the overall surface of the resulting component, right? That thing that, is generated when I execute a Spin build, that has a smaller surface, right? So
Yep.
there are less imports. My component does not rely on that many capabilities that must be provided by the underlying runtime, or
Yep.
must be exposed or added to the linker in advance of instantiating and running my module. So that was the first and the most important asset of why we modularized the Spin SDK for JavaScript. And the second one was that we, well, mainly you and Till, that all the experience we or the community gained by running spin apps or building spin apps over that period of time led to the conclusion that we may want to be as idiomatic as possible, and that we could hide like the complexity of dealing with a set of with words and combining them together, that we could streamline that and automate a lot of that to make things easier.
Yep. Yep. And the build tooling improved even as a the part we provide as a Webpack plugin, because
Hmm.
previously you had, like, for example, if you used a different component like dependencies, for example, for one you had to manually specify what package you were using and things of the sort.
Hmm.
Like basically you have to say this package is an external, don't try to solve it like manually writing it. Now if you, the Spin SDK plugin automatically goes and looks, oh, what are all the imports that this component would need, and automatically adds it to the external, so you don't have an extra step that you have to do every time you try to add a component.
I
Like for
see.
example, when you use spin tabs, you add a component. Previously you had to be like, oh, this component has this with interface import, so let me go add it as an external in
I
Webpack,
see.
and
Yeah.
you had to know what it was. Now it's all
Yeah.
taken care of by the plugin.
Yeah. So that allows us or the developer to remain in the ecosystem that they're used to, right?
Yeah, and like
Awesome.
it just, if people are more productive when you don't have to do things that are not generally in a developer workflow, the closer we can get to the idiomatic, the happier a developer is and more productive you can be without having to learn new concepts.
Mhm. Okay, this is great. So I remember like being on stream with at Raw Code. So
Yeah.
and then David asked, "Hey, you're using Webpack? That's cool, and it works. How tightly coupled are we to Webpack as of today? So if, for example, I think David mentioned ES Build or is the new cool kid in the ecosystem. Um, is it like,
I
would it
don't.
be big of a task to, if ESBuild has some plugin system like Webpack has, to basically take whatever we have and use ESBuild instead of Webpack? I mean, it.
I Yeah. I don't think it should be that big. I'm not going to commit to anything because I don't want famous last words.
No, no,
Uh,
no. I don't want to make you committed to something. It was just curiosity, and you
yeah.
explaining like that there is a Webpack plugin. I was just connecting the dots. Hey, is it?
So it's as easy. Like you can take any bundler as long as the bundler knows or understands what externals are, which every
Yeah,
bundler should. Externals being they are provided at runtime. Don't try to solve it at build time. That's the only difference. As long as every bundler supports it, and like if there is a plugin system,
mm,
then you use plugins. Otherwise, you have to modify configuration manually, which is not the end of the world. But I assume every bundler has plugins, and
yeah,
I'm very sure that ESBuild has plugins, and we could definitely do that. It just adds one more option to the setup. That's one of the reasons we don't really want to go too far. Like it's nice to have options, but there are so many options that you can provide.
yeah,
It what do you call it, like at the startup time, or like when you start with a template, it might be overwhelming having to choose between 10 different options, like
Yeah.
which could be not ideal. So definitely can do Webpack, and we probably can have a template for, with ES build. But if people really want it and there's an issue, we probably will do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's about an issue. I think it's more opinions, right?
Yeah,
So every day, I mean, it was like a couple of years back, it was really every day there is a new JavaScript framework or something along those lines, right?
it's still the same
I,
today.
yeah, it's still the same. At least from my point of view, I think it slowed down a little bit. Maybe we're down to every week a new project. I don't know. Just kidding. But what I mean, teams can always create their own templates and distribute them through, let's say, a Git endpoint or through simple things like a file share, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Some sort of remote. Um, to experiment or to make like the entire spin new experience like match or integrate seamlessly with whatever they are used to use. So I think the most important sentence you said is that um, if that bundler knows the concept of an external like a runtime resolve dependency, and if the bundler has some sort of plugin system, it's something that at least sounds like doable, not committing to some like
yeah.
effort. Yeah, they are, they're obviously, dark corners everywhere. So just curiosity. That's
Yeah.
why I asked it. Yeah,
That's all we
that's
use
great.
Webpack for. Pretty much the
Yeah.
only reason we use bundling is node dependencies.
Uh-huh.
As of the latest Starling Monkey, it knows how to do file dependencies like relative dependencies, but it does
Hmm.
not yet have a node resolver. And without a node resolver, you cannot really have NPM packages, and you kind of need NPM packages to do a lot of serious workloads. Like you don't really want to re-implement a router, for example.
Yeah,
So it's always like until we have a node resolver there, the reason we use Webpack is for that. And also the other potential reason is for when we are polyfilling things, because we don't support node APIs, we have the package called JSWASI-ext, which
yeah.
should release under the Spin framework soon, like to add polyfills for like process and file system APIs so that you can still use them.
I see. This is great. Yeah. Awesome. So now that we are looking at these Hello World applications that we have over here, let me quickly have a look at chat for a second. That looks good, right? Just give me a second. I would want to like take the example, let's say the Hono application that we have, and extend that and simply use you suggested variables, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Variables are the simplest Spin interface.
Okay, so let's go to, or let's do a new one. Let's do spin new t http ts. Let's say using spin SDK. There we go. We want to react to everything. We use Hono. Okay, so we're going to using this one, and we do our code dot and spin build. Okay, so variables. I mean, variables conceptually haven't changed, right? So we have to declare our interest in, hey, this application should use variables. And for example, let's say, what could we do? Like, let's say list limit equals to default, I don't know, 10, something like that. So now that we have the variable defined, we must allow our component to use that variable as well. So we say component dot using spin SDK variables. I could now come up with whatever name, like let's say limit. That's how I could access a variable now, or with that expression, like this one. I allow the code of my component to access a variable called limit. However, that would now result in me receiving an empty string. So we can use the interpolation syntax over here and say, hey, take the application or the application variable called list limit over here. And being able to, use interpolation while granting the component permission to variable is super useful, especially if you have things, and I'm just, sketching it out. If you have things like, I don't know, user name equals, let's say, default Bob, and something like host equals default api.foo.com, and you have a password which is required equals true, and it is, what is it, sensitive or secret?
I think it's secret, if I'm not wrong.
I think it's secret, right? Secret true, like this, right? So you could end up building things like connection string equals I don't know, Redis secure protocol, and it's always like username at password. No, user
It's colon, I think, in between.
colon at host followed by a bunch of other things, right? But the idea is that you can, rename variables, that you can compute like things like connection strings by taking sensitive variables into context along with insensitive variables and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So there are plenty of use cases that you can achieve by having that level of indirection. And you can also find granular control. Hey, this component, maybe my front end doesn't have to know about the list limit. It's more like I want to limit the amount of data being sent from the back end to the front end. Or maybe you say, hey, I use a grid with virtual scrolling capabilities in the front end, and I don't care about how many data or how long it takes to send all the data from the backend to the front end, non-functional requirements.
Yeah, there are so many things you can do. And like, for example, if you have multiple components, having a shared top level variable means you can change it in one place and it automatically percolates down to the different components instead of hard coding it in each of the components. Or
Yeah.
even if you're using the same variable, like Tarsana showing for interpolating the connection string, you could still have like multiple configuration fields that need a common subset. So you can pull that into a variable up there. It just allows more flexibility.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have a variable defined. So as our package JSON has no dependency on Spin framework besides WASI HTTP proxy to connect the dots to the trigger, and the build tools to turn our source code down to WebAssembly. What's the next step? The next step, I would assume, like, I read the docs, I learn, oh, there's variables, right? And then
We have now
naively,
included it in the README too, so like pretty much it's easier to find what package you need because I think the templates all bundle it in the README.
okay, so that means I go to there. Oh, there you go. Okay, so this is basically what we want to use, right?
Yep.
Oh, do you want to? Sorry for being distracted. Or distracting. Do we want to talk about why it is called Spin framework /spin dash?
Sure. The reason it's named Spin Dash is because it's a spin specific interface. Like we might have something like WASI variables or like WASI key value in the future that we might build an SDK for it. So just calling this at Spin Framework /KB might be confusing. That's
Yeah.
why we have the spin prefix to say it's the spin interface. And then if you have a WASI interface, it can just be called WASI queue.
Okay, so that gives you that's a direct or immediate indicator. Like in contrast, this is something HTTP proxy is not specified by a spin with word. That's more the implementation for the underlying WASI HTTP proxy.
Yeah. It's in the spec for WASI HTTP.
Yeah.
Common chat spec.
Okay, so now I copied that one. I go over here and I do this.
Yep.
Okay. Package has been added. Cool. Okay, now let's say, we can use this one. So for every incoming request, let's say, let's do const items equals this, and let's say we ask Copilot generate 20 items with a random GUID as ID property and random whatever, it would figure it out. Okay, John, Jane, it's doing stuff. Okay, so we get a couple of items. Let's say we take this, get rid of this one, and let's say return c.json result, and we set the status to result. So now the question is that we say let's do it let this limit equals 20 right now, and then we want to take items from, can I say skip? Is there a skip?
I think you probably just want slice. You want let result equals items.slice.
Let result equals to item dot slice, and it takes start number and number limit. Right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. So let's try it without spin D. So now we expect all 20. Oh.
I have no idea why this is different. Oh, can we go back to the code? Are we using any call randoms outside?
Maybe no.
Those are functions.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't do those outside.
Yeah. That's sorry. That was me. I haven't checked what Copilot generated. Replace this with hard coded.
While Thorsten does it, I can explain what the error was. Like for the spin build tooling, what we do is there's a step called wisening, which basically takes your code and runs the snapshot during build time, where it evaluates the global context and runs all the functions in the global context, so that when the actual request comes, you just run your handler and you're not spending time initializing the runtime and evaluating the global context. So what Wiser does is during build time, takes the code, runs it, snapshots the result after evaluating the global context, and puts it in the new WebAssembly module. And that's what we end up running when an actual request shows up. So if you have random calls during the wisening or in the global scope, they fail because we do not support random, because then the code will not be random, because it's not getting run at each request, and it's run once at build time.
At build time, at compile time, right? Yeah. Okay, so now that we have like no random on the global scope, I mean, another way to fix it would have been like inlining, moving the items into the actual handler. That would also address that issue, right? Okay, so we can curl localhost 3000 /items and pipe that to JQ, and I guess somehow we could count.
You could just grep for ID and then WC minus L.
Oh yeah, that's smart. Yeah, grep for ID
You
and
probably
then
want to do it after JQ.
oh yeah. If we do a JQ over here and then we can grab for the lines, right?
Yeah.
20.
I'm
There we
sure
go.
JQ has a way to count, but I do not know the
Yeah, I know.
implementation.
But I forgot the query syntax for that
Yeah.
one. So
I
now
love
just
using WC.
yeah.
This word count is quite nice.
Okay, now just for sake of curiosity, what happens if the limit exceeds the length of the array? Okay, it still returns the entire array. That's fine. Now we have hard coded our count, our limit, and right, that was exactly the perfect example why you don't want to do that, because I had to change the code, I had to recompile, I had, and that could be smoothened by using variables. So I would expect to have a variables or
You
get.
probably want to import get.
Yeah. Okay. So I have add spin framework spin dash variables right now, which gives me a get method, and that takes a string. Okay, we called it limit, and that could be null. So let's say we hard code a const fallback. I mean, is that required?
No, I think you can just give it you can just parse into the get and default of 0.
Default of 0. Okay, then I would basically plus that over there, or maybe you could also do, I think,
I would use parse int.
Parse int, and we have to give it like a radix of 10 over there. Okay, so this would be like a more robust implementation. So if for whatever reason, parse int, I mean, that could technically throw.
It could. You would technically wrap it in a try catch.
Okay, then I would say there is a method called getLimit, which takes nothing. And is it like this in JavaScript? I was writing Rust earlier today. Yeah, it's like that. TypeScript, sorry. So that returns a number. I would do that and try. I mean, zero makes no sense. So I would have like a const fallback equals 20, and it's come on, it's like this, and over here it's like that, and it's number.
Yeah, it's complaining because the lack of actually
the return statement.
Cases.
Number. Come on, fallback. What's now?
Oh no, it's string or number. You could just make fallback a string there. Or you can just parse in get limit, and then if you catch an error, you can. It doesn't matter. You can obviously there's like better solutions.
Like this?
Yeah, I think this is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. Okay. Okay. And let's take this and move that to over here. Okay, so now we have 20 items. We are loading that. We have a fallback of 20. Let's go to spin toml, and that's set to 10. Okay, so we expect if everything works, we get back 10 items right now. If things go terribly wrong, we still get back the entire list, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try that. Let's do a spin up -- build. All right, there we go. Let's curl. I mean, we should be able to spot if it is 10 items or not.
But yeah, basically you're doing you can just look at the number of IDs you have.
Yeah, the idea is like incrementing. Yeah. All right, so this is great. So now I could do things like setting spin variable limit, no,
I
list
think it was called list limit.
limit equals 5, spin, oops, no uppercase again, spin up, and we should get back 5, right? So now I'm using variables and I can configure my app from the outside without having to modify the code at all. And
Skipping the build as well.
yeah, skipping the build, that's true. But yeah, it's amazing. That was a good tip that all the packages are listed in the README. That makes it super easy to maybe modernize an older Spin app to the latest and greatest JavaScript or TypeScript SDK. And for new users that want to explore, hey, what could I do with a Spin app? Right, you could immediately like see, okay, you can do MySQL, Postgres, Redis, whatever, right? All those, and those are just the ones we provide by default. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, migrating from V3 to V4 should be relatively painless. And you cannot import everything from Spin SDK. You would just have to import from individual packages, and the same piece of code should work. Like you just have to modify your import. It's a breaking change, definitely, but the migration part should be fairly straightforward because the functional logic does not have to change. It's only the import statement changes. Instead of you importing KV from Spin SDK, you probably would do import star as KV from Spin framework / Spin KV, and the rest of your code can stay the same.
Okay, this is great. So last question, Karthik. What about the docs?
There's an open PR, and
Oh,
we
there's an
have
open PR.
SDK reference docs. We have all the SDK reference docs. This is the Fermyon ones. The link needs to be updated. Like this has the version 1, 2, and 3. Like if you look at spinframework.github.io.
Yeah, I'm on my way. Spin framework framework.dev.
No, just GitHub. There's a PR for the Spin.js. Like if you want SDK docs, it's at the GitHub.io page.
At GitHub.io.
.io/spin-js SDK.
This one?
This has the V4 docs.
Let's go there and paste that in chat as well. Okay,
This
and this gives me
reference doc.
Okay, this gives me the entire reference for all the different this is the one we were using. And like say SQLite, you can say I wanna where is it? SQLite.
Oh, you just want open. Like you open the database and then that will give you a store.
That gives us a SQLite connection. I was looking for that one. That gives us like an execute. If we speak about key value, we have to store. That gives us access to get JSON, to set JSON, to all those like known APIs that people were using for years right now, and that they wanna maybe learn or dive deeper or see what else is in there.
Yep. Like the actual developer docs, there's an open PR which just needs to go through reviews and then it should get merged. So.
Yeah. But this is great. This is the modularization of the JavaScript framework. That's obviously apps will get more explicit, right? By simply looking at the first couple of lines, you can tell. I mean, you could always like fully qualify with like the earlier versions of the Spin framework, but right now the package JSON gives you an immediate like hint. Hey, this app is using those capabilities without browsing through all the code.
Yeah, and as long as there is no Spin prefix package, then it should run on Wasm time too. Like if you don't use the Spin KV or Spin variables, it should straight run in Wasm time.
All right.
Or anything that supports the component model.
Yeah, obviously, every runtime that is able to fulfill the import of that
WASI
resulting.
HTTP.
Yeah,
just WASI HTTP and WASI CLI. I think those two are the only necessary imports.
Yeah. Awesome. This was great. A lot of things that happened and are still happening in the JavaScript world when it comes to building Spin apps. Anything or you're aware of what's happening next?
Debugging is something like like using VS Code ID debugging integration is something that should land soon. It was demoed earlier and in a workable state. We just need to figure out how to ship it properly in a template and work slightly around the UX of
Yeah.
using source maps because we do Webpack bundling. Once we have source map supports properly done, then we should have like you can step through your code like line by line and
Yeah.
use a
So
debugger as you would.
real breakpoint debugging. That's
Yeah,
what's on the roadmap next. And yeah, Till Schneiderite from our coworker here at Fermyon, together with Ralph Scilacci from Microsoft, they did a talk at WasmIO like a couple of weeks ago in Barcelona, and they showed like the history of how painful it could be when you have to troubleshoot wasm outside of the browser. I remember Ralph was doing a similar session the year before with dwarf symbols and stuff like that, and then they also gave a sneak peek on how it looks like with breakpoint debugging and everything, right? Call stack and in VS Code. So that's next on our list for the JavaScript experience, which is awesome, right? Which it will definitely is definitely a blind spot as of today for not just Spin, for building like or for
yeah, anything
project.
WebAssembly.
Yeah.
We are dependent on console.logging. With debugging,
Or
you can like just step through your code
writing
quite nicely.
tests, right? I mean,
Console.logs.
yeah, you can write. Come on.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. This was awesome, Karthik. Great, a lot of great news in the JavaScript ecosystem for Spin. That's amazing. I'm really looking forward on like getting hands on debugging and debugging real world applications to see why things break and how all those lights, turn on. I'm really looking forward to that. And
Yeah, I'm looking forward to debugging too. And obviously, we will have more compatibility stuff coming through when they come get shipped in the upstream Starling Monkey project. Like the
mhm.
entire thing is built on bytecode LNC Starling Monkey and componentized JS projects. So any new API that gets implemented there will be pulled in the next release, pretty much. So more compatibility with more libraries is
Yeah,
always a good thing to look out for.
it's always a good thing. Awesome. With that, thanks for joining me on the stream, Karthik. It was again great. And thanks everyone out there for tuning in. And if you have questions also after the stream ended, don't hesitate. Just write a comment and we will come back to you. With that, have a nice evening and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye bye.